Hello YouTube, it's me Amaxter, back with episode 5 of Behind the Mod. This time we have Sangar, the creator of OpenComputers and more recently TIS 3D, joining us. Hi Sangar.
Hello, how are you?
Good. So I was just wondering today, what's your story with regards to how you got started with Minecraft and modding for it specifically?
Okay, so I haven't been with Minecraft quite as long as probably a few of the previous episodes, but I think I started around 147 or something with a few friends playing actually a mod pack right away. So I think we started with one of the Feed the Beast ones or something. So the typical old mods, so Red Power, IC2, Factorization, and all the good stuff.
Yeah, back in the good old
And
147 days.
yeah, yeah, that was pretty fun. So I think pretty quickly we ran into a computer craft actually, and I think the first thing ever where I actually did some modding myself was actually an add-on for computer craft.
Huh.
Um, and then I kind of decided I wanted to learn Scala and started writing on computers pretty much.
So let's talk about OpenComputers, which is the Lua-based computers and peripherals mod you make.
Yeah.
So first, I guess you were inspired by ComputerCraft when you made it. So what improvements or changes to that formula did you plan on making when you initially set out to do it?
Well, so one of the biggest goals, which was actually the original goal, and I didn't even expect the whole mod to get that big in the end. It was just more of a proof of concept thing, was trying to get the computers to persist. So if you have some Lua program running on it and you leave the world in single player and you come back, then for computer craft, the computer reboots. And for open computers, it does not. It just carries on where it stopped before. So I actually wrote a small library in C, which persists the actual Lua state very low level, which is also why OpenComputers by default ships with a couple of DLLs or libraries, depending for a bunch of operating systems, to actually run the original native Lua version that is distributed by the original makers of Lua.
Huh. So when making OpenComputers, also I think one of the early things was you had this focus on survival mode and actually making it more, I guess,
Yeah,
viable with or
yeah, that came
balanced.
in pretty quickly. Yes, exactly. So basically, making the whole thing a bit more realistic in big quotes. So I mean, it's nice. Open Computers, Computer Craft is perfect for getting started with programming and just toying around with the focus on the programming itself.
Definitely.
But it's when you play in a mod pack with focus on survival with hard recipes or something, it's kind of weird to have this very, very cheap block that just does everything for you, in particularly in the case of turtles.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
back then, I don't know. Don't think back then something like Mantrika or something like that, where you could just change the recipes, was that common or even existed. So that was one thing, yeah, sure, to have a bit more realistic recipes and also have the computers use power because, well, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah. So what was the feedback you got initially? Like, were people like, "Oh, this is just open computers," or did people kind of embrace it as what it was?
It was kind of mixed. I mean, the first version I got out was maybe a bit too early, because I did at that point have a few more plans and wanted to add a bunch more stuff in the terms of peripherals and stuff. But at that point, when I got it out, where I basically just wanted to have people have a look at it and see if it's stable and stuff like that, it was very much similar to computer craft as it was. So obviously, the first reaction by a lot of people was it's basically the same thing, and why the fuck would you rewrite that? Sorry, can I curse?
That's fine.
Anyway, so yeah, so it was pretty mixed, but I think over time most people got the idea that computers does go in quite a different direction what the target audience of the mod itself is. So yeah, I think by now it's in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, and one of the big things about Open Computers is that it integrates with other mods really well. So, what's it been like to work on those integrations with other mods, and also just see other members of the community also hooking into your mod?
That was pretty great. I mean, the whole thing of adding integration on open computer side is it's let's say it's very hard to maintain because you get a lot of code that changes on a lot of different levels and at different speeds. And in particular, when you port to a new version of Minecraft, there's a lot of stuff you just comment out because, well, it won't work because the other mods aren't there yet. But in general, when you see that how things work together and all that, that's very great. And when the first other mods and bigger mods started adding integration for open computers on their end, that was pretty great. Yeah.
Yeah, and do you think mod packs had a big role with open computers?
I'm not sure actually. I'm not even sure. I think by now there's quite a few mod packs where it's in, but that took quite a while. I mean, it's basically a lot of mod packs, I think, still prefer computer craft because it's known and it's simple and they know what they get out of it. So, and in particular, in the case of the FTP packs, oh my god. So the feedback I got there was that they disabled the native libraries and instead used the Lua.j ones. So Lua.j is basically the same thing that Computercraft uses,
Hmm.
which is a Java implementation of Lua,
Huh.
and that cannot be persisted. So if you use Lua.j, then the computers also reboot for open computers.
And why
So
did they
there's
make
that.
that decision?
I don't know, various reasons. I think they were worried about that it might not run on some platforms or that it might be less secure, which I would argue is definitely not the case. But,
Yeah, I guess that's what happens when you have mod pack makers have their own agenda sometimes. But the
yeah.
modular aspect of open computers, I think, is its design is also seen in lots of other mods now, and it has been seen in mods like M uses Power Suits, Tinker's Construct, and lots of others. So
Mhm.
what do you think as a modder has made this idea of modularity, of being able to fit together various components into something new, and mods so popular with the community?
I think it's been popular before to a certain degree. I mean, module power suits already existed before that, I think. But I mean, if open computers did contribute to that, then that makes me very happy. I think it's a great part of giving a lot of flexibility to the players without having to put a lot of work in it, because you basically add a new part that can integrate in a lot of different ways with the existing stuff. And that way you get a lot of new content essentially for free, in quotes.
Yeah, and the nature of open computers is it's obviously very open-ended, so people can do a lot of stuff with it, and it's very powerful. So, what do you think is the coolest thing you've seen someone do with holograms or robots or just any implementation of open computers?
I would have to say that would have been the video streaming on the last BTM. So I don't know if you have seen it, but at the end of the last BTM, so the Minecon alternative thing in Minecraft for people who don't know it, it's basically a convention in Minecraft itself. So the
Hmm.
next one will be somewhere in July, I think, June.
Yep.
Um, so at the end of the last one, AC and I think Reezer it was, they set up a computer, so an open computers computer in Minecraft, to which they streamed video that they recorded in real time of themselves playing Minecraft. So that was pretty crazy, yeah.
Yeah, that's insane. They basically put Twitch inside of a Twitch player and an encoder inside of Minecraft. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive because one of the things that I did or still get to hear quite often is that the screens in open computers are pretty sluggish, which this obviously proved to be not quite true depending on how you use them. Which I'd also like to point out, it has a very good reason. They're kind of everything in open computers is kind of made to be sort of server friendly. So everything is locked down to a certain speed, and computers also can only use a certain amount of memory and all that stuff. So everything is very tightly sandboxed for the scripts that the users can run in Minecraft.
Yeah, I think that's a big part. As a server administrator myself, it's great to have a low tick usage for something like open computers. So as an educational tool, do you think Open Computers is good for players looking to work with programming, or is it more designed as something that you think people who already know the basics of languages like Lua will enjoy?
I think it's actually something more of the latter. I think for educational purposes, Computercraft and especially Computercraft Edu is much more appropriate. I think Open Computers is much more people who know what how to program or basically have a certain idea how hardware works and stuff will have a much easier time. I think it'd be great if new people get to learn that way, but I think it might be a little hard to get into.
Yeah, the just the style of open computers is very more, I guess, realism based. You know, you put together your
Yeah,
RAM, your motherboard, and everything, and I guess for that's not super friendly for everyone, but it is very much more, I guess, immersive for some. But
yeah. I think it got a bit better in the recent versions. As of now, there's an in-game manual with which describes pretty much everything. There's a complete setup your first computer guide in there and everything, but still, yeah, it's kind of complicated. Yeah.
yeah, documentation is always a tricky process. But let's switch gears to your new mod, TIS 3D. For those not in the know, can you fill us in on what it is and where your idea for it came from?
Sure. So, if you have played TIS 100, which is a completely separate game, then you pretty much have an idea of what it will do. If you haven't, I'd recommend you buy it because it's a great game. If you like puzzle games, so what it does is it allows you to, so the mod, what that does is allows you to build very modular computers again, but very much the focus on low level. So, for example, there's no need for electricity or something. It's
Hmm.
basically just a bunch of blocks and a controller block, which drives the whole thing. And for each casing block, you can place a certain module on each face. And there's a couple of different ones, for example, one to read and write Redstone IO, but the most important one is one that can be programmed in basically an assembly dialect, which is an extended version of the one that's in TIS 100. And in TIS 100, the goal is basically to solve puzzles where you have a number of inputs and you have to write the programs for the different nodes so that certain outputs are satisfied in the right order and stuff like that. And well, in TIS 3D, it's basically just a way to program the whole thing so that it does what you want. So I guess you could say it's sort of little higher tech than Redstone circuitry.
Yeah, definitely. And but the design of TIS 3D is meant to be very low level. I mean, it's basically assembler in
Exactly.
Minecraft. But more, I
Yes.
guess, was the idea to go more natively into the game. This idea of blocks being having very specific functions.
So the main idea was I played CS 100 and thought, hey, how about putting that in 3D? And then Minecraft was the obvious way to test this because I already knew how to mod Minecraft. The whole design of the mod itself is probably quite influenced by the recent drive towards no GUIs and stuff like that. So try to get the stuff as immersive as possible. So that was one focus, definitely.
Yeah, what people saying, no UI is the best UI, and I guess just
Yeah.
a minimalist design philosophy.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I guess it's inherently more modular than open computers because it requires many more blocks to get that functionality working, given the nature of the way the computers work. So, do you think was part of that, I guess, in addition to the game, was part of that inspired by the rise of modularity in other mods?
I don't know. I think it was just the natural way to implement the whole system of having modules that communicate over the edges with each other. So basically, the whole idea was, okay, I have one module per face, and then the obvious solution is, well, let's have multiple blocks where we can just arrange the faces any way we want. So I think that was really the main point.
Hmm. And the mod is three-dimensional, as the name implies. I mean, it's Minecraft. So, do you
Yeah.
think in taking that idea of TIS 100 and applying it to a 3D space, do you think that opens up a lot more creative possibilities?
I think it does. It's quite different than normal TIS 100. I mean, obviously you can just place a bunch of blocks in a line and have them just communicate on a 2D plane, but as soon as you need a bit more space, it makes sense to use all the faces and go around the faces and then have to keep in mind, okay, if I can go up here, then I can go right on the top and then I wrap around on the other side. So it's a very different way of connecting the nodes, so to say, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm both TIS 3D and Open Computers. I think you're planning to update to newer versions, right?
Absolutely. I'm currently working on the 1.9 port of OC. It's pretty much running of TIS 3D. It's pretty much ported, but there's currently, sadly, still a bug in Forge where where certain types of models are not working correctly yet. So I kind of have to wait for them to fix that. And I'm pretty confident that I'll have OC for 1.9 out pretty soon now.
So from a technical perspective, what's it been like, I guess, dealing with newer versions, which lots of modders have had plenty to complain about?
It's not easy. So, I mean, the 1.8 port was definitely a huge chunk of work because of all the rendering stuff changing. And I think everyone would tell you the same story, that it's just everything changed, and now you have to write JSON files and have to write different rendering model types, and everything is different.
Hmm.
But I don't think it's actually worse. It's just different. And obviously, if you have an existing code base which is older, then you have a lot of work to redo, which you actually kind of did before. So that's very annoying.
Yeah.
But I think it's also an opportunity to clean up a lot of old stuff, which I'm hoping to do soon. So currently, I'm just trying to get it to work somehow. And it does, but I'll probably have another look through all of the code at some point and try to clean that up.
Yeah, rewrites are always good, and we're seeing a lot of that with the later versions.
That's true, yes.
So going into newer versions like 1.9, it seems we've arrived at this new age of mods. We have like stuff like JEI and Chisels and Bits, redefining what we know as the mods they come from, like NEI or Forge Microblocks. So what do you think of, I guess, 1.9 as this new kind of new haven for mods?
I think it's an opportunity to start a lot of things fresh, yes, mostly because the big known mods have exactly these problems of porting and it being slow and it taking time. So it's actually quite the opportunity to maybe consider starting something new and something a little different. It's obviously a few of the big mods are just so well known and so popular that they kind of have to be ported for players to even consider moving to a new version.
Hmm.
But I guess new stuff has a much bigger chance to get noticed also because there's just not that many other mods already there. And it does open a few more possibilities than before just because of how the new systems work. So, for example, the whole block rendering is now designed around certain states, and those are kind of fixed. So it's not as much like before, where code could just generate any kind of model, and you didn't really know what that model was
Hmm.
until it was rendered. Where now the mods kind of have to define those models as a certain data structure, which then can be accessed by other mods. So stuff like I don't know, I think maybe even Carpenter's blocks can profit from that by accessing that data and wrapping around that, for example.
Yeah, I know with at least OpenComputers, what you've been doing is you have two branches, 1.7 and 1.8 and 1.9, and you've been kind of updating those in parallel. So what's it been like to support both of those?
A lot of work. Yeah, and it's not that bad. As soon as you have the big bunch of code updated and ported to the new version, then most of the changes don't really make that much work. It's just when you add a new model or new block that actually is render specific, then it's a bit of work to update it. But it's basically just like updating a super tiny mod, which is pretty quick, especially if you've done it before. So it's not that bad.
Yeah, and we've seen I think I saw Chisels and Bytes, which is a 1.9
Mhm.
integration for Chisels and Bits and OpenComputers. So what's it been like integrating with stuff like that?
I think the Chisel and Bytes, I didn't write that integration mod, so I know it exists. I think it's pretty neat. I think what it does is basically it converts what Chisel and Bits produces into and vice versa of OpenComputers' 3D prints. So, for those that don't know, OpenComputers has the capability to basically print any kind of block. So you define a list of shapes and set the textures, and then you can print that out, and then you have that block in your world.
Hmm.
And that basically allows you to define blocks, so to say. And I think that mod allows converting that vice versa, which is pretty neat, actually. Yes,
Yeah, it's definitely pretty neat, and it's all. I think as a mod author, it must be pretty neat to see people just kind of working on stuff like that for your mod.
it's awesome. Yeah.
So, what do you plan to do with your current mods going into the future, feature-wise, and do you have any other projects in the works?
Uh, Actually, so most of the newer stuff in Open Computers was stuff I just came up with on the fly. So it's not so basically, for example, the drones were I watched some TV and I saw these little quadcopters and thought, hey, that would be neat. So I added that. So I usually don't really have a long-term plan for stuff, and I still don't in this case, in particular in the recent, well, actually months now. I haven't had that much time to work on it, so most of the time is fixing bugs and updating to new versions and stuff like that. Because, well, when I started with OpenComputers, I was still going to university, so I had a lot of time. So now I have a job, and now I don't have that much time.
Mhm.
So yeah, but we'll see. I don't think it will starve anytime soon. I don't think it will die. There's enough other people also interested in the mod that keep me motivated to work on it. So that's definitely still stuff coming for it, I think. Yeah.
So you'll add stuff as it, I guess, comes to you, or
Yes.
okay. But yeah, thank you for coming on today. It was really
Sure.
nice talking about everything, and just thanks for all your insights.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thank you all you guys for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and see you in the next one.
Bye
Bye.
bye.